Yes. We came up with the problem statement: what are the consequences of welfare tourism in the EU member states? We made three problems. What is welfare tourism, and is it an existing problem? How does welfare tourism influence the EU member states and their welfare systems, especially in Denmark? And is Denmark moving towards a European welfare state, and is this the right decision? Our first problem: what is welfare tourism, and is it an existing problem? Is explained in Appendix 1, in which the definition of a welfare tourism is given by people from poorer nations moving to richer states to take advantage of the generous welfare systems rather than going there to work. And statistics shows that welfare tourism is a very small problem, and this is given by no clear statistics of its existence in the EU. However, in the UK, 7% of the people claiming working age benefits are non-UK nationals, which could clearly show that it is actually an existing problem. And the problem is that the EU border control is set to expire for Romanians and Bulgarians in 2014, and this has created some anxiety in the UK and other Western European countries, and posed the question whether workers from Eastern European countries should have access to the same welfare benefits as the nationals in the various countries. And there are two sides of this. There's the yes and the no. The yes, they pay the same taxation, and the EU migrants are more likely to be employed than nationals since they're younger, and therefore they're not as intensive users of the welfare benefits as the nationals. This is given by Appendix 3, which explains that these non-nationals who take advantage of the welfare system represent a very small share, and this is given by and this share is between 0.7 and 1% of the overall EU population. And this clearly states that the vast majority of the nationals moving to other European countries do so in order to work. And this is supported by Appendix 7, which clearly quotes, and I quote, "The remaining 2% of claimants, 125 people, appear to have no right to claim benefits." And this opposing this is the no, which states that the motive of people from poor nations is to move to richer states to enjoy their welfare benefits rather than going there to work. And this is given by Appendix 2, which explains that the minimum wage differs greatly within the EU. And this is not exactly a piece of evidence for welfare tourism, but it is clearly a motive. And the minimum wage in Romania is, for example, 157.5 euros, which is 10 times lower than the minimum wage in, for example, Belgium, in which it's 1,001 euros. And the same pattern is seen in unemployment benefits, in which Belgium has a unemployment benefits of 3.79% of their GDP versus the Romanians of just 0.56%. And this is an opposite purpose, as the principle of freedom of movement could potentially become an issue that divides rather than unites Europe. This moves us to our second problem, which is: how does welfare tourism influence the EU member states and their welfare systems, in especially Denmark? So, therefore, it's phantom policies for a phantom problem, which is given by Appendix 8. And although the statistics present the problem as being insignificant, some politicians argue that the expenditures of welfare tourism conflicts with their ideology. This is given by Appendix 4, in which Morten Messerschmidt from the Danish People Party states that it creates a huge incentive for especially Eastern European citizens to come to Denmark and receive these benefits without working, and he claims that 9 out of 10 in Poland would gain more from welfare in Denmark than from working in their own country. And this creates a huge pressure for the if these people decide to move to Denmark, it creates a huge pressure for the Danish budget and will potentially drain the Danish GDP. And this limits the possibilities for Denmark to reserve national benefits, welfare for social benefits, welfare for Danish citizens and Danish taxpayers, as non-Danes will also possibly also be applicable. This benefits will also be applicable to non-Danes. Appendix 5 explains that Denmark and other Nordic countries have social policies focusing on egalitarianism, which is a political it states that there needs to be social equality for everyone, and this is very expensive, and therefore it has led to reforms reducing corporate taxes, both Danish and also a foreign burden to the social system in Denmark, which has raised a debate on whether or not Helle Thorning should keep her promises or should adapt to the EU policies. Decisions by Helle Thorning-Schmidt, and I quote, "I think we have found the right formula, not to be popular, but to do the right thing," has increased the unpopularity of the Social Democrats, as she was elected on the promise to tax millionaires, but instead she reduced corporate taxes and raised the pension age, and cut in unemployment benefits, which clearly is a deviation from her ideological standpoint. So this shows that she leads a policy of adaptation rather than following her promises and her ideological standpoint. However, there are also other factors which play a large role in this. For example, globalization, which means that there will be less sovereignty and a limited range of policy options for Denmark. And outsourcing, as the higher taxation in Denmark makes us unattractive to foreign companies, as it's very expensive to come here and place your setup of work. It is also affected by our competitiveness, as a large welfare state is very expensive, as it needs higher taxes, and the people are forced to pay for this. By lowering the taxes, it will lead to a higher competitiveness, and a more Europeanized Europe will also heighten the competitiveness. And our third problem is that Denmark moving towards a European welfare state, and is this the right direction? The European social model states that a shared model of social policy in Europe. It's an idea of it's an idea of a welfare model in Europe in which all states have the same benefits, even as foreigners move to other countries within the EU. Most states in the EU follow the conservative cooperative model, which means that the amount of social benefits are determined by the social status of each individual. This is exemplified in, for example, Germany and France. And however, in Denmark, we are following the Nordic social model, in which welfare benefits are available to all citizens, not based on income, which has led to a low Gini coefficient and very little inequality. The book European Union Politics states that the idea of a European social model always has been present, as the member states in the beginning were very different, but then started to converge. But then convergence has been made, so they have moved closer to each other. This is also supported by Appendix 5, in which states that Denmark is moving away from, I quote, Denmark is moving away from the ideological Nordic social model. We have seen and I quote again, debt crisis in several southern European countries has brought pressure for change, and the current Danish welfare system is unsustainable and risks becoming unaffordable in the 2020 plan due to scourges on our generous system. And Appendix 6 states that Appendix 6 by the Economy states that Denmark is well functioning and others should learn from the Nordic model. The Nordics are at the top of the league from economic competitiveness to social health, and this is given by the quote, they have avoided both southern European economic sclerosis, and another quote, but the Nordics also offer something for the progressive left by proving that it is possible to combine competitive capitalism with a large state. The last quote explains why it's so popular. The main lesson to learn from the Nordic is not ideological but practical. The state is popular, but because it is big, not because it's big, but because it works. And parallel trends, persistent diversity, the report explains that there has been some catch-up convergence as a number of non-Nordic countries adopted policies, measures similar to those of the Nordic countries, which means that Denmark has moved closer to the ideal type of the Nordic welfare model over the last 20 years, and the membership of the EU has not changed the Nordic welfare model. Appendix 6 supports this, as the Nordic model is not, or states that also states that the Nordic model is not the ideal model, as public spending as a proportion of GDP is way too high. Neo-functionalism explains that states with shared policy areas converge further, and the political and economic spillover effect takes place, in which policy making on some areas indirectly affect other areas, and thereby leads to further integration. Helitonic states, reforms are necessary and we will not stop. These reforms are, for example, cut in benefits and education. Liberal intergovernmentalism explains that the idea that states and the public need to have interest in the integration before it happens. This is given by Appendix 1, which, and I quote, polling has indicated antipathy from Brits to presumed influx. A YouGov poll from September showed that the majority of Britons now oppose the right of people who live in the EU to live and work wherever they want. So Denmark has become more integrated into Europe, which means moving closer to the conservative cooperative model, with elements of new functionalism in the statements of Helle Thorning-Schmidt. If the EU will become an area with equal social benefits, the term of welfare tourism will be eradicated. Denmark is highly economically situated, as the deeper integration will not affect Denmark, as the less fortunate countries will drag Denmark down, and Denmark will not have to compromise and reduce our welfare. Other non-Nordic countries are converging towards the new Nordic social model. The Nordic countries are doing rather well, and this could explain a development of the Nordic social model. Instead of moving away from the Nordic model and moving towards the conservative cooperative model, as it would decrease